Hey, hi Pallavi. I will just send you a request now. Hi Aishu. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, good. I'm sorry I had to reschedule. So
That's
much
fine.
confusions in between.
I know.
How are you?
When you told me, you were like, "Oh, it's been a overwhelming day." I was like, "Oh God,
Yeah, it
tell
was
me
crazy.
about it." Yeah, no,
So how are
that's all
you?
right. I'm good. I think, I'm still dealing with the information that we have another few weeks to go,
Yeah, no,
and
right.
I think everyone is. So
Yes.
I don't know. How are you dealing with all of this?
So, right, my daughter was away from me for a month.
Yeah.
So she just got back 3 days back. So I'm happy that there's an extension so I get to spend more time with her.
Yeah. At
A
least
little
the
bit
whole
of
family
selfishness
is
there, yeah.
together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm a little bit selfish in that way. You
That's nice. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think
know?
it's
First of all,
selfish to want your family around. I think that's the only thing that's keeping me sane. It really helps that the whole family's around and
true.
together. I
Yeah,
can't imagine what it's like for families who are just scattered all over the place.
yeah.
It,
Mm.
yeah. But yeah.
First
Yeah.
of all, thank you so much for agreeing to do this with us. And I've been following your work for quite some time, and you're doing an amazing job.
Thank you so much. And thank you for
I was
thinking of me and inviting me to do this. I'm really honored to be part of this. I've seen the
oh, it's
other
my
lives,
pleasure.
and you have really, people who are experts in their field coming and speaking, and I think it's a great idea. And I want to congratulate you on everything that One Life is doing and spreading awareness. I think any kind of mental health awareness is just the need of the hour.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
give our followers a little bit introduction about yourself and what you do.
So I am a mental health professional in training. I did my undergrad in psychology, and then I was working with an NGO called the Banyan. And over there, I was doing a little bit of assisting in women who are homeless women with psychosocial disabilities and mental illness. And then I
Okay.
was doing a bit of research as well over there. And then I started my master's at the Tata Institute of Social Science. And it's a 2 year program, 1 year's down. I'm doing counseling psychology. So that's what I'm training to be. So there's a lot of psychotherapy and things like that, which I really enjoy. And I think a lot of the content as well that I put out in my page is kind of inspired from what I'm learning over there, what I read, what I experience
Mm.
personally. And a lot of times it seems to strike a chord with the people, who look at my work. So I think if there are things that are helping me and are able to help people around me as well, then why not, right? So that's why I started my
True.
Instagram page. And yeah, it's also for me, it's also kind of a creative outlet because I do the vulnerability project as well. So
Yeah.
just getting word out on that mental illness is more common than people think it is. It isn't as scary as people think it is. Just breaking down a few of those myths. So
Mm.
yeah, for me, it's a really enjoyable process. So yeah, that's about it.
How did you get this interest of getting into mental health? Like, did you have any experience in your past or something like
Um,
that?
Not I didn't have any experience, so I was hell-bent that I want to become a vet because I used to really enjoy spending time with animals.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just hell-bent that I was going to be a vet and I was going to help animals and whatever, spend my time around them. And then when I was about 15, I went on this exchange program. So I was in South America for a while, and that was the first time I was introduced to humanities. So we were studying like psychology, sociology, political science, religious studies, all kinds of things. And it was so interesting because I had never been exposed to that kind of stuff here. It was just, like botany, zoology, chemistry, whatever.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah. So then when I went there was such a vast range of subjects that were offered, and I studied psychology and sociology and all of that. And I was like, this is what really interests me. But I hadn't made up my mind yet. So when I came back to India, I kind of did I did a liberal arts undergrad because I was still like, oh, am I really sure I want to get into psychology? But at the undergrad level, when I studied and I read and things like that, I was really convinced that this is what I want to do.
Okay.
And
So
I
it's
think,
destiny.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can call it that, but I also feel like with mental health, it's just something that overlaps with every field, every single
True,
field. So
yeah.
it's,
Very
yeah,
true.
so it doesn't limit me in any way. It's actually quite free,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
I like that about the field. Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So we have a question with Ajimal. So view about
Already.
psychology impact on COVID-19 and to overcome that.
So that's what this entire talk is about.
Yes.
So yeah, just stay tuned in. But just in brief, I think mental health is definitely getting impacted right now of all strata of society. There are people who like people like me and you who are trapped in our houses. But really, it's just such a blessing that we're able to be in a safe environment without having to go out. It is hard, it is tough to be indoors all the time, and that does and may probably will take a toll on your mental health. There are people, unfortunately, who don't have very secure homes. Like in the papers, there's a lot of news about domestic violence cases rising,
Yeah.
things like that. So people who don't have very safe homes or people who live on the streets. So it has huge impacts on mental health. It's also impacting the economy in a big way, and we're going to see that. We're going to see the consequences
After
of
this
that
year.
for the next few years. So it definitely has a huge impact on mental health. Yeah.
So today's session is specifically for teenagers. So we'll start with the first topic that we wanted to discuss on why adolescents are vulnerable during this situation, this COVID situation, with regards to mental health.
I think there are a few answers to that. Firstly, there's just like the biology of it, right? So the thing is, in in humans, in adults, when there's a situation or when there's an event, if you're past the age of 25, sometimes you have a lot more a very like rational approach to an event, right? And that's because like the rational part of our brains, which is the prefrontal cortex, is fully developed, and so we're able to just respond to things rationally. But a lot of research says that the prefrontal cortex, which is the rational part of our brain, doesn't really get fully formed till the age of 21. And some people say that it doesn't get fully formed till 25. So any event that occurs, it's almost like there'll be an exaggerated emotional response. So just by their age itself, they are at risk. There's also I think another dimension to it, which is in that age group is when oftentimes mental illness starts to kick in. And so events in that situation, like if you're in your early adulthood or late teens, an event, a stressful event is more likely to kind of kick in like a mental disturbance. And so it's one of the other reasons that adolescents are really, really like susceptible, and it is important to pay special care to people in this age group. I think it's also, I think the last reason why maybe they're quite susceptible is because I was actually I was watching a video, I was watching a lecture, and the man who was taking this lecture said that teenagers and young adults have they're very hopeful about the future, and they have a very high social consciousness, and that's where things like there's eco anxiety, which is a lot of teenagers face anxiety about climate change and about global warming. That's because it's almost like the hope of their future is very interlinked to the hope they see in the world and the hope they have for the world. So it's almost like it's enmeshed. So if I see the situation of the world going really badly, and I know it's going to have a direct impact on me, so they are more sensitive to triggers like the COVID-19 situation that we're facing. Yeah, so I
So do you
think
think this
these
is
are.
because of overexposure of news that we have today?
I think that's definitely one of the factors because I also think that there's a lot of, I've said this before as well, that there's a lot of bad news that we're seeing. I think in a situation like this, you're getting information about, okay, there aren't enough testing kits, there's not enough being done, there's not
Yeah.
enough, health infrastructure in place. There isn't enough being done for the less fortunate. So we're constantly consuming this, and we know that our thoughts form our reality. And if we're going to keep consuming this, it's not healthy. So what I really believe in is just setting aside like a little bit of time to consume news, you know. And some people even say that setting aside time to worry, because it is natural in a situation like this to worry. So if I'm going to worry, I know it can sound ridiculous, but I'm going to set out half an hour, 45 minutes, or even 1 hour if I need to just worry. And then after that, knowing that worry will probably reduce my own immunity and will have adverse effects, and so I'm going to reduce that time of worrying and reduce that time of news intake. So I think that's one of the things that is definitely important to kind of do. Yeah.
So also like teenagers or the preteens, they find it really hard to understand if, when you said, right, the mental illness kicks in during that phase of life. And it's hard for them to understand when they go through certain things. And there are possibilities of it to like, prolong and get like worsen up. So what are the things you think parents or family members should do or, observe when certain things happen? Like what are the precautions or what are the things they should look out for,
Okay.
or like symptom type, because one thing with mental health is like there's no particular symptom for you to identify
Yeah.
and then you
Yeah.
get it treated or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, my understanding of it is that when something like this kicks in, it doesn't just kick in as a full blown mental illness. There are always mental illness, after all, is it's like a manifestation of what is going on in your own head or the situation around you. So possibly at a time like this, what will happen is that, say specifically to this situation, if I'm getting bogged down by the fact that I have to stay within the four walls of my house, then maybe the first signs would be, if the person starts to withdraw. So then I'm finding it hard to deal, and so I withdraw. And also some of these symptoms, they don't look the same in everyone. They manifest in different ways for different people. So if you're at home with a loved one, you're likely to know best what their patterns are. And I think seeing a shift in that pattern will be your first sign that I need to look into it and probably be there for this person more. Because a lot of times when these kind of things are setting in, or if you're struggling with certain things, what really helps is one of the biggest factors is social support. If I'm able to see, even in that state, if I'm able to see that people around me care for me, that I have the social support that I need, then if I can trust the people around me, then that's half the battle won. I don't need to do too much more. So I think acknowledging that this is a tough time, acknowledging that things are changing, that nobody has the answers, and being able to be there for that person is one of the bigger things that people can do for people around them.
So one more question I had is, so normally when teenagers finish school and they step into college, all of a sudden they expect a kind of freedom from parents, and then there's this clash in between where the connection between the parent and the child is lost when they enter that phase. So
Yeah.
what kind of support do you think parents would need, like rather than the children, because it's again a shocker for them, right, all of a sudden. So, yeah.
I think this involves like both parties, because the child, and it is a fact that a lot of times with our Indian parenting, a lot of children do find it, a bit, can find it suffocating or things like that. So the children often want to be able to kind of explore the world for themselves, and that can trigger anxiety for the parents, because at the end of the day, if you're a parent, you are going to be supportive of your child. So in that case, I feel like a lot of times what happens is that if you're not able to have like clear, honest, open communication, then you're going to start. It's what we call psychological games. If I can't openly communicate with you, then I'm going to start doing things. I'm trying to imply something to you. You know, things like that. And then the situation doesn't get solved; it just gets uglier. So I think in the relationship, to kind of establish enough trust to, I should be able to go and tell my mother or father that this is what I'm going through, and at this phase in my life, I would like a little more of freedom, you know. But also as a child, to assure parents, or as parents to assure your child that you have enough confidence in the person to know that they'll make decisions in their benefit, you know. So I think it's more of a compromise, because children, if children want say complete freedom and parents want complete like hold of the children, it's not going to work, because at the developmental stage also you're also kind of figuring out your own identity. You want to explore, you want to see what's out there in the world. So I think it's really just a compromise between parents and children to be able to come to a middle ground and say, this is what works for you, this is what works for me, and this is how we'll compromise.
That's amazing.
What do you think of that?
I think so, yeah. So, I mean, when we were in that age, like again, that's what we felt, right? Like we wanted to
Yeah.
explore the world, we wanted the freedoms, and like you think, I think compromise is something that's important. Again, over
Yeah.
controlling doesn't work. So you know,
Yeah.
that's the change between our parents' generation and what we are going through. So I think, yeah, I think there's no other go. We need to compromise.
Yeah, yeah. I think also when there's over control with the parents, it says more about the parents and has a lasting impact on the child. Because of too much of anything, the child is just going to go in the opposite direction. If you're going to try to be too controlling, the child is going to get a lot more freedom,
Yeah.
then they're just going to feel suffocated. So it doesn't really serve too much of a purpose. And in a
So
case
that's the
like
thing
that,
with yeah, that's the thing with our Indian parenting, right? So they look at their kids as though like, you know, they are the version of the parents. But I think every individual should be treated as separate individuals, and
yeah,
we just need to be there as a support system being parents.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think it's fair to, you know, impose what our life experience has like, you know, given us.
Yeah, I
That's
think
one
it's
thing I
also,
strongly believe.
yeah, I think it's also just a sociological thing that for generations, this is how, like, when we're in a collectivistic society, this is just how things function, you know, like, even with work, there are family businesses. In the living situation, there's joint families. So everything is very
Yeah.
interconnected. And I
Yes.
definitely see, and there are definitely pros to that as well, you know,
Yes, yes.
because we see that, like, in joint families, the social support is a lot higher. If I can't speak to my mom about something, I speak to my grandmom about something, or my aunt about something, you know. But we see that, like, for example, in nuclear families, there may be a little more freedom, a little more independence. So I think both systems kind of have their pros and cons.
Pros and cons, yes.
But I think navigating that is more important than anything
More.
else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
true. So there's a question here from 19 underscore Mansha. So she's asked how to overcome laziness mentally.
Um, I think that's a big question. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people are struggling with this because the lockdown is getting extended, and it's always just like, oh, we have more time on our hands, and it's like, okay, I don't know what day of the week it is, I don't know what day of the month it is, and it's all kind of just like enmeshing together.
Yeah.
But I think a routine really helps. I heard someone say that um, don't let your weekend mode become your weekday mode. Like, if your weekend is meant to chill, then you chill on the weekend. And whether you're doing like work from home or whatever it is you do that you see as productive, and it doesn't even have to be productive like in the conventional sense, even if it's just working on yourself or doing or like learning skills that you've always wanted to learn or things like that. I think a routine really helps, because what happens with a routine is that with this I think a lot of us are facing this feeling of not being in control of the situation because it is beyond our control. So I think if we have a routine and if we have set timings, then it's possible that you check that feeling of not being in control. You are still in control of your day. And it's not like you're giving up that control of your day and your time to this whole COVID situation. Because it is true that it may feel like that, but if you make a conscious effort, it is in your control. So I think setting timings and setting time limits and actually looking at a calendar once in a while, I think all of that can help with like procrastination, laziness, all of that. I also, sorry, I might be rambling, but I don't think we should be calling it laziness. I think at this time, if your body and your mind is telling you to rest, then intuitively that's probably what you need. A lot of us might be working really hard and might be hustling and might be doing a lot of things for prolonged periods of time. And now that we have this couple of weeks or like even a month where we're just sitting at home and we don't know what to do, it's probably time to wind down. And if your body is like, if you're sleeping longer hours, if you're not feeling like being as productive, that might be your body and your mind's way of telling you something. And maybe we shouldn't be putting a value judgment on that to say that you're being lazy. Get up and do something.
True,
Yeah.
So Vignesh 4 has a question. What if people don't worry about the situation? Is it another kind of problem?
If people don't worry about the situation, then that's their choice. I think different people have different ways of coping. I think we can't expect everyone, and it's unrealistic as well to expect everyone to be consciously contributing. You know, everyone has different ways of reacting. And if I'm not constantly in the loop, if I'm not constantly watching the news or doing something to help people around me, that may be because some people get overwhelmed in this kind of situation. We have to remember that this kind of situation is something that we've never seen before. So everyone is dealing with it in their own way, and I think we can't make people deal with it in a way that we think is appropriate to deal with it. You know, like I said about the whole laziness thing, like one person might say, you're being lazy by sleeping all the time, but another person might say, this is what I need and this is how I'm going to deal with that. I think intuitively all of us know, we all know the best way to deal with it, and that's what we're going to do. You know, so I don't think we should be worrying about.
It's just like follow your intuition, whatever your mind and body says.
Yeah. So I think and that's another thing with like children and adolescents, right? Like if you are able to figure out for yourself, if you are able to you know, like regulate your emotions, deal with your own emotions in a healthy way, then children and people around you, not even children, just generally people around you, are going to learn from you, are going to mimic that behavior. So I think it's more important to look inwards and figure out what's working for you than to try and control how people around you are reacting, because we're never going to be able to control that. You know, like some things are just out of our control, and there's nothing you and me can do about it, or should try to do about it even.
Yes. So I have one last very important question. What's your take or your view on teenagers, you know, using therapy for help?
Teenagers using therapy for help. I think not just teenagers, I think people of all age groups can benefit from therapy.
Yes.
I think teenagers, I think it's important because there's often I don't know whether it's a misconception, but there is this general belief that teenagers may not trust their parents enough, or it might be a time in their life where there is a lot of you know, say friction with other family members or friends or school, or if there's some kind of bullying happening in school or abuse from somewhere. So I think it's great if there is a safe space that a person can use to be able to, you know, like work through their feelings in a healthy way. And if there's a therapist or a psychologist who's able to provide that safe space, and is able to, professionally guide the person, then I think it's ideal. I personally I'm a big believer that therapy helps. I've seen it help with me. I've seen it help with people around me. I'm a big believer, but I also think that I said this, I think, in my previous talk as well, that therapy, after all, is um, it's a very modern, westernized kind of concept that's relatively new to the Indian context.
Yes.
It's also, there are a lot of people who can't afford therapy, so accessible mental health services are new. So I think for a kind of like a social context where therapy is not the norm to deal with your emotional issues, it's going to be hard to then say um, everyone needs therapy, because that's not going to work. You know, I think people have their own ways of dealing with things. Like some people intuitively may start drawing or painting, and that's one way of doing it. Like even in therapy, we see that people use their hands, or use their senses, engage senses in some way, so that it takes the attention off your mind. Or to be like, okay, get out and exercise for a bit. And even in therapy, they'll tell you that because vitamin D helps, it gets your neurochemicals going, it gets your serotonin going, your endorphins going. So these are all things that actually we know, but therapy is useful to get back into that groove. But I think in reality, there are a million ways to be able to connect to yourself, and be able to heal yourself or work through your emotions. And therapy is just one way of doing that. But I would definitely recommend it, because I'm a huge believer. Yeah.
I think people who have like experienced it, it's like a magic, right? Because
Yeah.
again, so even I went through like depression, and when my mom suggested therapy to me, I was like, I didn't want to take therapy. I thought therapy was
Yeah.
only for people, who has like extreme mental illness,
Serious.
not for
Yeah.
common person.
Yeah.
And even when I started therapy, I didn't take it seriously initially. So a few techniques that they gave me, I felt like, doing this, how it's going to help me.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
I went to a point where I had no other choice. I had to do it. And then when I saw the change, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just like magic.
Yeah.
Right? You just
Yeah.
got to believe it, that it would
Yeah.
help you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the
Uh,
reasons people have a tough time is because it's a long-term process, and the progress you
yes.
see is slow. So I think to
Yes.
be able to
It's
stick,
yeah.
yeah, to be
You
able
need
to
to be
stick with it,
consistent. Yeah.
exactly. And I think that's one thing that people may find it hard to, keep doing it every week, and setting time. I think setting time aside for ourselves is something that we're not taught to do. I think a lot of us, like,
Yes.
we haven't seen people around us do it. Emotional intelligence isn't so valued over here, and so it's kind of like you have to make that conscious decision for yourself. It's not really something you learn, and I think that's why sometimes it's hard for people to seek therapy.
Yeah. True. So we have one last question. Can you please give us quick calm down technique in these stressful times? So I actually loved your 5 4 3 2 1 technique that you posted in your
Okay.
IGTV. That was like amazing. So do you
Did
mind
you
like
try it?
sharing? Yes, I did.
Oh, you
I
did?
found really
Okay.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
like those are just something really basic, but we just gotta just do it consciously.
Yeah.
So I found it really interesting and amazing. So do you mind sharing it here?
Yeah, I'll do like a quick run through. So there's something called the
Yeah.
5 4 3 2 1 technique, which is basically like, say at a time of this pandemic, your brain can kind of, your thoughts can kind of run wild, and so to kind of curb that, what helps is engaging all of your senses. So there's on my Instagram page, there's a video called the 5 4 3 2 1 grounding technique, and it engages all your five senses. And so there's like five things that you can see. So it can be anything around you. It can be trees, it can be a window, it can be a chair, it can be a cupboard. Four things that you can smell, two things I don't remember exactly, but all of your senses. So it goes like that. And then the last one is one thing that you can taste, where it's actually you actually taste something. So I'll Pooja, maybe you can share the video
Yeah,
as
I
well.
will
I'll
post
send
that
it
in
to
the
you.
story. Yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that
yeah, sure.
people asking can just
It's up
use
on
it.
your IGTV, right?
It's on my IGTV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would put
So
it that way.
yeah, so basically what it does is it engages all of our senses, and what happens is when we engage our senses, it quietens down the mind because your attention is focused on other things around you.
Yeah,
So that's one technique, and I'll share it with Pooja, and Pooja will share it so you can
sure.
look at that.
So I don't see any more questions. So is there something else that you wanted to share for today's session?
I think since we're talking about adolescents, and if there are any like parents over here watching this live, or there are siblings of people who are teenagers or young adults, I think there's a lot of anxiety also about, say, if people are entering their 10th standard or entering their 12th
Yeah.
standard, entering college, there's a lot of uncertainty that's going on. And I think with people, say adults, I think it's a little more easier because you're like, okay, if I'm able to keep my job now, and if I'm able to work from home, then it's going to be the same once this crisis ends, hopefully. But I think with people in this transition phase, it's hard. So I think for parents or siblings or even friends, to be able to acknowledge that these are very valuable, not only valuable, but these are very real emotions, and it's not something that should be pushed under the rug. If they're feeling it is because, say, a person in ninth standard was supposed to have, say, extra classes for 10th grade for the next 2 months, or a person who is like, say, going to college, would have had to do their college applications at this point. So I think all of these are very real concerns, and to acknowledge that, and also kind of validate the child that, whether it's institutions or even people in positions of power or authority or whatever, recognize that this is a global crisis that everyone is facing, and
Yeah.
accordingly, like, there are going to be measures that will be put in place to help everyone. It's not like it can feel like a time where I'm the only one who's facing uncertainty or suffering. I think validating that everyone is going through this,
Going
and
through it. Yeah.
it's affecting everyone, and what you're feeling is in fact normal. I think acknowledging that and being there for someone is really important.
I think what you say will also apply to startup entrepreneurs, because it's again the same kind of feeling that they go through.
Yeah.
And like 2 days before, I got a message from one such person who's going through uncertainty, the emotions of all that. So I think what you
Okay.
said is like very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So was there anything else that you wanted
No,
to
I
say?
I think I think that's it. I think this is about it.
Yeah, great.
I think we've answered all of the questions as well.
Yeah. I don't see any more questions here as well. So I think we'll
Awesome.
end the session now.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Pallavi, for your time and all your information. It was really helpful. I'm sure it's helpful for everyone who's watching this video. And I will record it. I'll post it in One Life's IGTV
Okay.
and our YouTube page, and I'll let you know
Okay.
so you can also spread the word
All
out.
right. Thank you
So
so
I'll
much
also
for
share
having me.
your. Oh, it's my pleasure. I'll also
Yeah,
share
and
your 54321 technique in my
yeah,
page so that people can
yeah, I can
use it.
just refer to it
Yeah.
and use it if it helps.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to say thank you for thinking of me for this. I think it's a great
Oh, it's
effort.
my pleasure.
I
Thank
think
you.
with everyone online, it just helps to have these kind of little fun things going on, so that it
Yeah.
just like keeping people engaged is amazing. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pallavi.
All
Take care.
right. Thank
Stay
you.
safe.
Take
Take
care.
care.
Bye.
Bye bye.